We are not live. We are not live. We are not live, but we are here, Gary. Hello, lovely Gary. Hello, lovely YouTuber. My name is Rachel. This is Gary. Gary is the teacher. I am the pupil. And if you are a regular viewer, you will know that every week we choose to do a little crafty, creative, artistic thing. We try and teach some things along the way. Gary tries and teaches me, although you should have seen me threading this machine. I need to watch my own YouTube video to see how to thread the machine again. But you know, it's a learning process, Gary. It's a learning process. So here we are, and you can see that Gary has got a cup of tea there. There is going to be something a little bit more creative there in a moment. I have got mine. Have we got nearly the same mug today? Oh no, slightly different. Yours is curved.
Mine's, yeah.
But I do have builder's tea today. Do you have builder's tea today?
Yes, I do. Yes. You've got to have a strong cup of tea.
Yes. We are in sync on the tea. So we always bring a cup of tea. We always do a creative thing, and then we change the creative thing as well. So if you look in our playlist, which is Tea Time Tutorials, of course, we always have one on a Friday. We try to go live when we can. If you hit the subscribe button right now and the bell, you'll be notified of when we go live. We would love it if you would like this video. Just click the like now. God, it's easy. Go on, just go to the little thumb. Because that helps us get to more people like you who want to know about these creative endeavors. And as I say, we mix it up, but today we are going to be doing some sewing. We always do a little mindful quote at the beginning just to get us in the mood. So we're going to do that in a second. But just to let you know that today's lesson will be sewing with jersey. Ooh. And we're talking about the stretch stitch, so we're going to be working on that. Now I will do a time code underneath, so if you're not interested in anything we have to say now and you want to get straight in the sewing, you can simply click the thing below that says jersey sewing. There we go. Right, we've lost all of our audience now, Gary. They've gone to the sewing. But for anybody who's stuck around with us, I'm going to give you my lovely quote, Gary. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready. So, right.
Our sewists among us might have heard of lovely Zach Foster, who is an American quilter. Love him, interviewed him. There is actually a great interview on this channel with him, a couple of interviews actually, if you have a look at the Live in 5 playlist. But he actually quoted someone else on his Instagram yesterday, and I thought that's a great quote. And it is from a Jewish philosopher called Martin Buber. I'm not sure how you say his name. Buber. I don't know how you say his name, but it's Martin Buber. And what he said was, it's very simple, Gary. All real living is meeting. That is the quote for the day. Now, what does that mean to you? Because Zach kind of went through his thoughts on it, and I thought that is very true. But what does that mean to you? All real living is meeting.
Yeah, I suppose because it's all about living in the present, living now, this moment now. And so it's about meeting that person today, now, speaking to them. I suppose also when we meet someone, maybe we interact with them, we have a little chat with them, and you never know what information might be imparted. What you might say to them might spark something in them. Could be anything, could be the most silliest thing. But if you meet someone, even if you just say good morning to them, that might just be enough to set them up for the day, and then they're off. You know, oh, someone passed me on the streets, then they just said good morning as they passed me by. It might be just a little thing that just sets their much more a positive approach to their day.
Yes, well, I agree with that sentiment. And what Zach was talking about as well, which is very much in with what you're saying, is that if you think about this world, it is becoming, I mean, for example, Madison and I were shopping in London and we passed this shop. I think it's an Amazon shop now, or a supermarket, isn't it? One of those. Yeah, and they're trying to make it all robots. Mm. And I just thought, what a shame it is what, you know, this world is kind of turning into. Let's get rid of people, because let's face it, robots are going to be cheaper than people in the long run. Yeah. And maybe, you know, these people who are doing it, it's not all about money. Maybe they think they're more efficient. You know, you press buttons and they do exactly what you ask them to do. They don't go off for a tea break, the robot. But I just thought, you're losing that interaction, aren't you? And it's like when you go to the supermarket and you buy a pepper or whatever it is, and the checkout girl will go, oh, do you know, I never cook with these, but I really should. And you might say, well, all you have to do is put some rice in there and a bit of stock and put it in the oven 20 minutes. And Then she goes home and she makes that, and then someone else really enjoy. You're spreading that joy. It's that ripple from having that one little tiny meeting. And I think that exactly what you were saying, Gary, when you said, well, does that mean meeting deadlines? Does it mean meetings? Does it mean big meetings? And I think it's more just about meeting people and having those little moments in life. And I think we shouldn't take any of those little moments in life that you have for granted. I said something the other day. There was this lady when I was in London. She looked amazing. She was in a shop. And I said to her, when we'd finished doing our business, whatever, I said, oh, by the way, can I just say your look is amazing? And she looked at me and was like, what do you mean? And I went, well, you've got this bobbed fringe and the red lipstick. I said, you look fabulous. I said, you know, I would look at you twice in the street. You know, you just got a strong look about you. And you could see she was like, that's just so nice. Someone has said that to me. And we walked out and my daughter went, what are you like? And I went, always compliment people. Just always compliment people.
Yeah.
You know, just be nice to people. Just be nice. So there you go.
It is, I have to agree though, like what Maddie said, you know, sometimes it can be a bit sort of off. It sort of throws you off kilter when someone gives you a compliment like that.
Yeah.
And it can suddenly like, oh, what do you want?
Well, we were just saying that, weren't we, before this little piece today? We were saying that Americans are, I think, so much better at doing that kind of thing, at giving compliments, receiving compliments, because it's like, as they say in America, you can be the president of the United States if you want, go for it. You know, I'm not sure it's that easy. I think you might need a few pennies behind you, but you know, it is, I think it's that American dream. And I think that they're not afraid to compliment people and accept compliments. And I think you're right here. It's like whenever someone says, that's a nice dress, and the first thing you say is, oh, it's in the sale, it was only $9.99. Instead of just going, oh, thank you. We always have an excuse. But I think the meeting, I think that the meeting, I think the moment you have, whether it's a fleeting thing or you meet someone and have a great conversation with them or whatever, so important to the fabric of life.
And it's about being a human being. That's the key thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Not
what
the
makes
robot.
us human. Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes
not
us
the
human.
robot.
So there you go. That's the thing, thought for the day. Whatever you do in life, do it, and your little ripple will send out big ripples and hopefully joy and positivity. Lovely. Okay, so that's that. Shall we crack on with our sewing now?
Yeah. Right, timestamp.
Okay. Sewing. Bang. Okay.
Okay.
Lovely.
So what I want to do with you today, Rachel, is I want you to, we're going to get you to sew a little bit of stretch fabric. And I said last week that I've been doing quite a few projects coming up at the moment, which are online, that we are going to be online, that are about stretch fabric. So I've been doing a lot about it. It makes me think a lot of people don't realize that creating with stretch fabric is so accessible at home. You don't have to have special equipment. And what I want to do today with you is for you to use your sewing machine. I've got my sewing machine here, but just your ordinary sewing machine. And we're going to look at just doing seams with your machine. Now, so that means you don't need a serger, because sometimes people think, oh, I can only do stretch fabrics if I've got an overlocker serger, or something that's called a cover seamer. Do I need a cover seamer? No, you don't need any of that. You can literally create your garments or whatever you're making in stretch. Could make soft toys out of stretch fabric, but you can do it from your basic sewing machine. It's just different stitches. That's all you've got to think about. Now, just before I get started, with stretch fabrics, it's a joy because it's very forgiving. Stretch fabrics do what they say they're going to do. They're going to stretch. So when you make a garment out of it, like I'm wearing my t-shirt, you're wearing your little t-shirt there as well, it sits nicely to the body. We don't have to worry about putting darts in to fit around a bust, and we don't have to put a zip in or some sort of fasteners at the back to get it over our head, because it stretches. It sort of comes and goes. So, you know, though you make it to a certain size, there is a leeway in there. There's a little bit of give and take because it's stretched. But stretch fabrics don't always just stretch in one direction. They can stretch in two directions. So depending on where you get your fabric or what it is, it's always a good idea just to check where your stretch is. Now, I know I've given you some stretch fabric, haven't I? Oh, you've got some there that you cut up a t-shirt or something.
I did. So this is the t-shirt. And just to say as well, you know, when I was talking to Gary about this fabric, and I said, well, will that do? Because it's kind of like we call it in the UK an airtex. I'm not sure what you would call it in other places, but it might be the same. But it's an airtex, so it's the kind of thing like, you know, a uniform t-shirt would be, you know, like one of those little tops, like a Fred Perry top, that style of thing. But you said, yeah, that's fine as long as it's got a stretch, and it
Yeah.
has got stretch in there. I can feel the stretch, and it does actually stretch always.
Okay. So Rachel, majority of stretch fabric, so stretch cotton jersey. So this is not a woven fabric, it's knitted. So
Yeah.
it's knitted, but we still buy it on the roll and we can still cut it up. But if you looked at it under a microscope, it would just, or a magnifying glass, it looked like a knitted jumper. So if you imagine your knitted jumper that your grandmother knitted you or your mother knitted you, it's the same, but it's just much finer and smaller. And quite often we've got different, this one's like a cotton jersey. Yours would be a cotton jersey mate for your AirTex. And majority, the stretch goes widthways. So if you imagine the width of the fabric, the stretch goes across, but some go downwards as well. So you can press it downwards. So see which ways. Has it got the same?
It's got about the same, really. We know that that's the bottom because there's the seam from this t-shirt I've cut up. So that's be worn. So I'm just looking at it there. That's got a good.
It has.
And a
That's
good
really good.
there.
Where my cheap, I've just got a cheap bit of cotton jersey that I bought on the roll. It stretches widthways, but if you look, when I push it lengthways, it really, it's not really stretching at all. So mine's a one-way stretch. You've got a two-way stretch. Now that's fine.
Yeah.
You'll probably find if with any of you that are working with stretch fabrics, one has got more stretch than another direction. So always remember the one with the most stretch, it's better to be across the body. So if you're cutting out a t-shirt or a dress or something that you're going to wear, where it's going to go across the width of your body, that's where you want the most stretch to be. Now, because when I was younger, I remember these pair of knitted trousers.
No. Do you have photographs? We need to see photographs of these knitted trousers.
And bless her, my grandmother had made them for me with a little jacket and knitted trousers. But these trousers, they grew with me. Not only did they stretch lengthways, but they just got longer and longer. And so I'd never really grew out of them. I still got them now. No, I haven't. But, you know, that's what, and I think sometimes you see garments that are just like, are going to stretch down the body. You don't want that. You want the stretch across. You don't want it suddenly to get longer and longer and longer as you're wearing it, like a long baggy t-shirt or a long dress or something that's just going to get longer. So that's why we need to remember widthways, what's going around with the stretch.
Yeah.
Another thing you need to remember, now I know you won't have this, Rachel, on your machine because I didn't want you to get any special equipment, but there is one thing that is quite useful to get, and that is you do need to have really, but you'll get away with it today, but you should really have, instead of what we call a standard needle in the sewing machine for sewing, and the standard needle is great for woven fabrics, what you should have for jersey and stretch fabrics is you should either have, it's either called a ballpoint needle or a stretch needle. Now, both those needles, instead of being a real point at the end, they're slightly rounded. Now, again, you'd have to look really, really closely under a magnifying glass to really see that the tip of that needle is slightly rounded. And that's because when you're sewing jersey fabric, you don't want to pierce the fiber. So if you pierce the fiber with the point of that needle, it could ladder. It doesn't matter in today's little experiment, but what you want is the rounded edge. So imagine my tip of my finger, which is rounded, it goes between the fibers. So instead of going and actually going into the fiber and sort of like sort of destroying it, it goes between and then it will sew. So that's what you want to do. Now, I looked up because I wanted to think, what is the difference between ballpoint and the stretch needle? So when I looked this up, when I did a Google search on this, and I sort of kind of knew, ballpoint is really for everything. But if you've got highly elastic fabric, which could be under the label of spandex or lycra, which is really elasticated, use a stretch needle. Because what can happen is, because it's so stretchy, as your machine is sewing, it could miss stitches, where it probably won't do that if you put a stretch needle in. So that's the only reason why we have those two things there. Okay, right. let's do a bit of sewing. So let's just talk about a bit of sewing here. So I'm going to just bring my machine into view, and I know you've got your machine there as well. So
Yes.
normally, whoops, let's get that in there. So you can see my machine from above, but you've got a brilliant view of Rachel's machine.
Yes.
Now, what I want to do is I'm going to just sew a seam with just ordinary straight stitch. So that's how we would normally sew our that's how we normally sew our bits of fabric. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric together here, and I'm just putting the 2 edges together. And seam allowance on when we're sewing with stretch isn't that 1.5 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. It's actually much narrower. It's really just the foot width, and so it's round about 0.5 centimeter seam allowance or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You don't need it any bigger than that. It's very narrow. If you are sewing with that wide as that in your seam, what you'd have to do is you'd have to trim them down afterwards. If we were just to use a stretch, so I'm going to just get I'm going to do we're just going to do a straight stitch to start with. So I'm going to just machine on my machine with a straight stitch. And if I get you to do the same, you're just going to do a stitch, and we're going to have a look at what happens with a straight stitch. So I'm just going to run 1/4 of an inch little straight stitch along the edge. Along the width.
You're a Speedy Gonzales, you have. I'm just getting I'm psyching myself up because it's quite sorry, this bouncy camera, because I'm just touching it while I'm trying to hold my fabrics. Okay, it's not going to be a perfect seam because the camera's too close to the cameras. Oh, now you see already it's difficult, isn't it? It's sewing with this jersey stuff compared to like cotton.
It is. I would suggest, Rachel, that maybe you put a little bit more fabric under the foot, because you've just got it half under the foot and half away from the foot. So you need to.
Okay, hang on. Let me just move. Hang on. Right. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to do that back stitch. Right. I'm going to take this off. That's right. I'm going to lift that, and I'm going to cut that. Yes. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to, like you say, I'm going to put a bit more underneath. There we are. So, where was I? Oh, I tell you what, it's pretty good. It's not a straight line, but it's neat. Right, let's. Right, so I'll go about there.
That's it. That's much better.
That's much better. Right, I'm going to see if I can just move my machine back a little, giving it space.
Lovely.
Okay, here we go. Now you see, I'm finding this a struggle.
Yes, because it's sort of like.
Why? In a second.
Okay, see if you can get to the end.
Well, I can, but there's only one piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop it there. Okay, let's just hang on. Oh. Right. Lovely. And now let's lift that up, lift that, pull it out. There we go. And then just cut that off and cut that off. Right. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's sort of moved off a bit, so it's come off. Did you have it double thickness? Have you just going through one thickness?
So no, I went through the 2, so I've got.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I found was, I mean, I'm not, as we know, I'm not an expert, so I'm not even a sewer really.
No, but tell me how what happened.
Yeah, what I found was difficult, Gary, was that as I was sewing it, if I went too slow, then it was just too slow to do anything. If I went too fast, I was kind of holding the fabric, and then I'm sort of trying to pull it as I'm sewing with it, because if I'm not, it seems to ruffle up.
No, and you don't want. Yeah, you don't want to pull it while it's going through. You should just you should just be guiding it and letting it naturally go through.
Okay.
And what you'll find is, and especially like now, because you've just used a straight stitch, in fact, you've lost a lot of that control, that stretch. So it feels quite rigid now. It's not stretching as much. So you've lost the stretch quality of it. And in fact, what I've done with mine is I've stretched mine so much that in fact, all my stitching is now popped. So it's popped and it's come away. So I will, if I had opened this as a seam and I was wearing it, it'd start to have gaps in it and holes in it where the stitching has actually just popped, because what has happened is that straight stitch, you haven't got that elastication. You haven't got that elastic. So if you try to move that elastic, you'll find that it just breaks the stitches.
Yeah.
So one thing you need to remember is you don't use straight stitch when creating or constructing with jersey. What you need is a zigzag stitch, because a zigzag stitch, think of a spring. So it's zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. So when it will hold it together, but when you go to stretch that fabric again, the zigzag elongates out, and so you've still got that stretch quality. You've still got this quality of the fabric, but you've obviously stitched it together. Now on your machine.
So what you were doing there then, Gary, was showing us what not to do.
Yes,
right.
That's what you. So if I was to go straight into stitch to start, well, zigzag stitch to start with, you wouldn't say, well, I'll just use the straight stitch. No, straight stitch doesn't work, but zigzag does.
Yeah, that's
now
great.
the machines we've got so we both got a brother machine here. We've got one that looks like it's like a zigzag, but looks like a bit of a lightning bolt. Have you got that one?
Would that be number 3, do you think?
Well, on mine, it's number 8. It probably is not number 3. Have you got one that looks like a bit like, rather than just zigzag, have you got one that looks like a lightning bolt?
Well, to me, number 3 does look like a lightning bolt.
Does it? And have you got a zigzag? Go on.
3.
Ah, yes. Yes, number 3 is yours, I think, a stretch stitch. Let's try number 3. Okay. So I've got one which looks like a lightning bolt. So what I want you to do is I want you to put on, so you're going to go to that stitch. So for me, on my machine, that's number 8. For you, it's number 3.
Yeah.
And I want you to do exactly the same. So you're going to put you're going to put another piece of fabric under there, two pieces together. And I want you to put the fabric underneath the foot and put the foot down. And you're only going to have it so that it just rests up against the side of the foot. So it's not gone, you're not doing a big seam allowance, you're just doing a quarter of a seam allowance. So 2 pieces of fabric together. Yeah. 2 pieces of fabric, they're not very straight, you just cut them. Okay, and then that's it. Onto the foot down, that's it. Now sew a line with that one. So that is the what they call is it's going to be a bit slower, so it's going to take its time. Okay, you're going to and we're not pulling this fabric now, we're just just it's like when you do the buttonhole, isn't it? The buttonhole does itself. Yes. So you're just letting it guide through. It might take a little bit longer because it obviously, instead of a straight stitch whizzing along, it's going to just do a zigzag. And it's doing a very narrow little zigzag there. But is it feeding through okay, Rachel? Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. A lot better. It looks. Yeah, maybe a little bit lumpy there, but maybe because I went too fast. See, I'm just impatient. Right, I know this is not a straight line, people. I know, hang on, I'm going off the end now, so I'll just stop it there. But it's not, of course, it's not properly cut fabric, is it? It's just, I've just literally cut it in a couple of lines that are wobbly. So let's just have a look at that then. Have you got good stretch? So that's that side. Yeah. Look here. Now, hang on. That looks like is that right? Yeah, it looks. Yeah, it's got a slight zigzag to it. That's it. It's a very small zigzag. Yeah. Now, see what stretch and return you've got. Have you got stretch and return there? Yeah. Along the two sides together? Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No problem. So you've got plenty, and it's not, those stitches aren't popping. So that is a zigzag stitch on these machines. Now, our machine and your machine are relatively modern. And I think I've said this before, if you've just got maybe just a straight stitch and a zigzag, you can use the zigzag. So now we're going to do one, and this is the one actually I use all the time. I don't even bother with that stitch. I just use a zigzag. So I'm going to just go to my program zigzag, and I'm going to do exactly the same. And you can go, you've got a zigzag on, just a plain zigzag on yours. Yeah. Well, that's the one I was using, right? Number 3. That's it. Yeah. So for me, have you got just a plain zigzag? So just press. So you're just going to go to that one. That's the same one though, number 3, right? No, that one was lightning bolt. So you should have another one. You should have just ordinary zigzag after that. Number 4. Yeah. Okay. Try number 4. So number 4 is what lots of people have got. They might not necessarily have a brother machine with all these stitches on, but they will have just as long as the machine's probably around about the 1965, 1970 sewing machine, which majority of us have still got, it will have a zigzag on there. And if it's got a zigzag, you can use it on jersey. So have a go at that, see what you get there. It's going to be a little bit wider than zigzag. It's going to take a little bit longer, just like before, but you'll still get a good result just with an ordinary zigzag.
Yeah, that is. Oh, I need to start this a lot more in, because I'm already going. Yeah, okay, I'm making it work. I'm making it work. As Tim says in Project Runway, make it work. I'm going to the end again now. Yeah, I need to start further in, but we'll get the idea. Yeah, I've gone
until you get to the end, right?
Yeah, I've gone off there, but that's fine. We get the idea. We're not making anything. Okay, cool. So yeah, yes. Now that is a much bigger zigzag.
Zigzag. You still got.
You didn't get my Spice Girls reference then, did you?
No, I didn't. What did you say? I've missed.
I said it's a zig.
So yeah, so it still should have the stretch and return. Yeah, I think for you, Rachel, I mean, this is why it's good to practice, actually, is getting the position of the fabric under the foot. Yeah. So you don't want it halfway under the foot, because it's going to get caught and it's going to go off on a tangent. What you want to do is just get the foot just onto the fabric and then keep it straight as you go along, so that you get a nice even stitch. But you'll see that you've got that stretch and return there, but also when you open it up, you've got a nice seam inside that has constructed that quite well. Yeah. So that's how you use to begin with. There's other things you can do as well with your machine for stretch fabrics. And in fact, you can use your twin needle as well. So you can get your twin needle out and you can do twin needling stitching. So if you have a look at some of the stretch garments that you've got, there's a little bit of twin needling usually around the neckline, maybe around the cuff on the sleeve, something like that. So you can have a go, but that's a whole other lesson. And I don't think we need to rush ahead into doing more the detailing yet. What we need to do is just learn how we can construct with our basic sewing machine, and then be able to make it and make things with that.
So which zigzag stitch would you use? I mean, I've got 2 options there, 3 and 4. One is that lightning bolt, the other one is like a standard zigzag, and the second one was the bigger stitch. So which one would you suggest that I use if I have both? The bigger one?
I would use your standard zigzag. So the lightning bolt one is fine. That one's fine. But I find the best results are actually just from a zigzag. Just using the zigzag. Yeah. And again, you can choose if you've got two widths. So it might be how close or how wide those zigzags are. If you've got options, try different options on tiny little samples of fabric like this, and try the options and just see what is the best result. Yeah. Obviously, what you would do now is when you've got your little sample, you've tested that out, go and steam that with the iron. So just go and press that with the iron, so you check that you've got a really nice seam, that it looks nice on the other side. Mm-hmm. And the little trick, just the last little trick, which is use spray starch on the edges of your seams. If you find, what happens is you'll find that your seams, because it's stretch, it curls up, and it's forever curling up, and you're trying to press them out. Now, I would use a dry iron, no steam to start with, only when you're finishing the garment off, and just a dry iron. If it's still curling, what you do is you use a little bit of just a spray starch on the edges of your pattern and a dry iron, and you'll find that they will all lay nice and flat. Obviously, in time, when you wash that garment, all the starch will come out, but it's a great way of stopping the edges of your jersey fabric rolling up. So you can always use that for that. So you use a little bit of spray laundry starch just on the edge, and then a dry iron, and then it will lay flat, and then it's so much easier then to put flat edge to flat edge and then machine it. Once it's all machined and you re-steam it or repress it, it doesn't matter with the starch, it can disappear, but it's just there to help you to begin with.
Fabulous. Brilliant. Okay, let's bring us back in.
Let's bring us back in.
Let's bring us back in so we can have a little chat. Okay, that is really, really good. So the main things I would take from that is I would definitely use the regular zigzag, which is the bigger stitch on my machine. Try and get my fabric in a little bit more, because I do feel, having done, you know, regular seams on cotton and then that, I do feel that you need to get it, you need to push it across a little bit more than you normally would, I think, because it's a bit deceiving. It sort of
Yeah.
goes off.
Another thing, it
yeah,
might, sorry, Rachel, it might have been that, you know, if you then went and got a ballpoint needle to put in, you
yeah,
find that it would act a little bit differently there as well. So that
yeah.
would help you
So
too.
that's
So,
definitely a thing to consider. And
yeah,
then, and don't pull this fabric, because you'll be stretching it
no,
as you're sewing it. So you need to kind of, what you need is patience,
yeah.
which I don't have. I'm just like, come
You let the machine feed it through. You're just there at the front, just like guiding it, because sometimes you need, but don't try pulling it from the back, trying to pull it through. It's not going to help in the construction at all. You need to just let it, you're guiding it through and doing that.
yeah, okay. Fabulous. Well, do you know, once again, Gary, I have learned something again. If you'd said to me, work with stretch fabric, you know, do me a seam, I wouldn't have known what to pick on my machine. I mean, there are so many stitches there. I really wouldn't have known which to pick.
Mm,
I would have gone for the straight stitch. I would have gone for, I would have thought, why can't I use a straight stitch?
yeah.
As you said, it starts coming apart. So once again, I've learned some little things there. This is what it's about. It's just about learning, you know, little bits of information as you go through, and then, you know, progressing from there. Now, for anybody who is used to working with uh, machines and sewing a bit more than me and jersey fabrics, Gary has got a lovely class coming up with us in October. If you're watching this before October 23, you could book a place on the class. I will put a link in the description box below. It's a live class, it's on Zoom, but it will be recorded, so if you can't make it or it's the wrong time zone, don't worry, book a ticket and we'll send you the recording a couple of days later. But if you are coming to us after October 22, well, then it should be in the shop. So once again, I will put a link to our online shop. It won't be there before October 22, but it will be there in November, because it just takes us a few days to edit and then put it onto YouTube, and then we put the link in the shop. So then you'll be able to watch it as a recorded class. So that's Gary making a lovely little tunic. Mm. Fabulous. Right, so Gary, the question remains, what about next week?
Well, next week I'd like to go back to a bit of hand sewing, and I think I'd like to teach you another embroidery stitch, and it's going to be blanket stitch. So I'm going to teach you
Oh,
how to do a blanket stitch. So I know you've done a French knot.
yes.
I think that's all. I think that's the only one I have taught you so far. So a little bit of blanket stitches is quite nice, because when you sort of make it quite small, you can applique things with it, or you can do a nice edge around things with blanket stitch. So it's a
Yes.
useful stitch to have and to learn. So yes, you're going to be doing a bit of blankets, just a little bit of hand stitching. We're going to get you to do that around an edge of something.
Okay, perfect. And that will be live, I think, next Friday. Should be live.
Yes, live at 5 next week.
Live at 5 on that Friday. I don't know what date that will be. Friday the 9th.
Yes, 9th. I'm looking across at my diary. Yes, the 9th.
Yep, the 9th. Fabulous. Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Gary. And thank you to you,
Okay.
lovely YouTuber, for watching us today. We hope to see you on the next one. And as I say, if you're just catching these and, you know, they're not live because you're just finding us, I mean, it might be 2029. I really don't know what year it is that you're finding us, but have a look in our playlist, because we have got the Tea Time Tutorials playlist. But of course, if you're a serious sewer, there are so many other things to have a look at there, like blocks, applique, projects, interviews. As we we're saying with Zach Foster, there's an interview with lovely Gary Mills as well, and all sorts of things on the channel, and we're always uploading and updating, so just have a good old rummage. We won't think you're rude, and do please subscribe. It would be lovely to have you as a subscriber, and lovely if you could hit the button for us, and even nicer if you could leave a comment. If you've got any tips about working with stretch fabric, leave your tips below. We would love to hear them. Perfect. So now all that remains is for us to say au revoir,
Bye bye.
auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, see ya. Bye.